So I have the pleasure of talking to Tracy J., the founder of the Quiet Rebel LLC, a boutique consulting firm specializing in creating space for authentic and grace-filled conversations about race and culture. Her motto is, we focus on a more human approach with love first, always. Tracy started the business from the process of self-examination and introspection, thus proclaiming herself as an introspection coach. She helps people navigate tough conversations, take stock in their reality, and facilitates a process that creates actions that can be implemented. So today I'm going to talk with Tracy about her journey, what she's learned, her motivations and inspirations for creating such a space for people to show up as their authentic selves, and really what it takes to stay in the hustle. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Felicia. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So let's jump in. When I talk to you, let me just tell you, I was just so moved by your journey and why Quiet Rebel came to be. So talk to us about this not so linear approach you took to where you are today.
Okay. So this path to Quiet Rebel, to being the Quiet Rebel, is about a decade in the making. I actually started uh the thought process around entrepreneurship in general with a concept that was supposed to be a partnered event with my then husband. We talked about hosting a class for couples that was called Before You Even Ask. And it was supposed to be a way for people to have sort of the hard talk before they got around to asking the big question, right? Because usually you've already invested so much energy into this other person. They know your family. And by the time you get around to asking a person to get married, right? Like a lot has been invested.
Mm-hmm.
We also tend, and it's a gross generalization, but we tend to skip really critical questions along the way.
Yes.
We wind up married to people who we don't really know.
Right. You know them, but you don't really know.
Really know them, right? So that was the initial, like, very first seed in this journey. And that didn't come to pass. And I decided that what I wanted to contribute to that space was space for people to ask themselves questions.
Mm.
And so I launched a class independently called Would I Marry Me? And, well, like I just said a second ago, right? Like that you don't really necessarily know the other person. But what was more true about me was I didn't really know me. And so it's difficult for somebody else to know you if you don't really know yourself.
Right.
So I was hoping to offer other people an opportunity for self-examination before they tried to attach themselves to somebody else for a lifetime. Right. So I did that for a while. And what I learned from that experience was that these questions were applicable in all kinds of relationships and not just in romantic relationships. So that was where the idea of being an introspection coach came from, which was giving people an opportunity to sit with themselves and ask themselves what I called big life questions. Because we do little life questions all the time. And, we operate our day on the little life questions. What am I going to eat today? Do I have enough gas in my car? Can I pay my light bill? Right? These are little life questions. But like, who am I in this world? And how did I come to be this person? And do I like myself? And am I honest and trustworthy? Like these kinds of questions we don't tend to sit with about ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I have been on this sort of journey of asking hard questions and having other people ask themselves hard questions for a long time. Along the way, I also picked up some other sort of wellness practices that I wanted to share with people. And so when I first decided that this company was going to be the Quiet Rebel, the quiet part of it was about introspection, but it was also about what do we do with our silence and how can we use silence as a way to activate the sort of sleepiness that's within us. And so I hosted silent retreats and something that I call bubble meditation, where I teach people about blowing bubbles and how that is a good way to regulate your breath and to literally watch things leave your body that don't belong there. And in my regular life, in my vocational life, alongside all these things, I worked in nonprofit spaces. And much of that work was in ecumenical spaces. And so I did work with different kinds of faith communities, mostly interfaith kind of work. And I had an opportunity to be in spaces where people were discussing religion and their particular religious ideas and ideology and choices and practices, and sharing those with people who were not like them. And I really liked that. And in 2019, I started wondering, what would this conversation look like if we weren't talking about religion, or we weren't just talking about religion, but we were also talking about other aspects of race and culture? And I live in Houston, Texas, which is the most diverse city in the country. And really, I hope that somebody in Houston was already having this conversation and I could just plug myself into it. But I couldn't find the conversation I wanted. So I decided to hold a conversation on the leap day in 2020 called 100 Voices, which I invited 100 people, which turned out to be 100 women, into a space to have a guided conversation about race and culture. And what I didn't know then, what none of us knew then, was that in 2020, the world would shut down and then it would crack open. And that conversation that was an outpouring of my heart would become an essential conversation throughout the country. And then it sort of snowballed. And now that thread of asking questions about ourselves and who we are in the world and how our lived experience impacts other people's lived experience has evolved into a framework that I call a more human approach. And that is the way that I get people to ask hard questions now.
Gotcha. And so, Tracy, I love this name of the business, Quiet Rebel. And so, I was going to ask you, like, where'd that come from? And so I like that you're having these quiet conversations with yourself, because I think that we live in a space and place where there's just so much noise that we don't take the time to hear ourselves think. And I mean, you liken it to like a prayer. What prayer? You got to go a place where you can, tune out the noise. And so I like that you are pushing us to have conversations that we typically won't have. We don't and we won't, because there's a little bit of a fear there, right? About what can be kind of unearthed from sitting in that space. But I am curious about the rebel part.
Yeah.
Like where does that come from?
Um, I just said this to somebody earlier today. I have never met a normal that I liked. And I just don't, when people are like trying to put me into a box of some kind, I don't feel right in boxes. So I tend to push against boxes. So that's where the rebel part comes from.
Got it. And so, now we're having these, and I love how you say the world cracked open, because like you were having these conversations about race, culture and race. 2020 happened. And we really needed to have some authentic conversations. Um, and so were people really being honest and authentic about this race and culture and times that we were embarking on?
I think it was sort of twofold. I think, yes, there were people who were already ready to have this conversation and they didn't know that they needed it. And I think those people, yes, were being honest. And then there was the people who were sort of voluntold into the conversation.
Okay.
And they were the ones who were showing up to check the box to say, you told me I had to come talk to these people. I'm going to talk. And I found that those people's answers often were surface. I'm going to tell you just enough about who I am and how I came to be this person in the world that it feels honest, right? But it may not be entirely everything, which is fair, right? Everybody's on their own journey. But what I've also found is that people will come back to me later and say, I wasn't ready for that conversation when we had it, but here's what has happened since then.
Okay. 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 And so that really leads me to like, I wanted to know like were there these aha moments that people had, particularly when you're in a room with people that you thought you knew?
Yeah. So for the very first event, I had the luxury of making it very intentional. And even people who came with their sister, mom, cousin, neighbor, we tried not to put them at the same table. So we had 10 tables of 10 women. And if you came with a person, you got separated from that person. So you got to have a conversation with hopefully mostly strangers. Now, Houston is a big, small town. So it's hard to be at a table of 10 people and not know somebody at the table. Right. But we were hoping that nobody was sitting with people who they already knew well.
Got it.
Right. And so you can then go back and be in the car on the way home and share that experience and talk about what you discovered, but you don't have to do it. You don't have to be as vulnerable with the people closest to you in that moment. Well, since then, we have had family members be in the same space and coworkers who have to go back to the desk with each other the next day. And one of the things that I noticed right away that I didn't expect was how much people laughed when they were having these conversations.
That uncomfortable laugh?
No, just like laughter at like sharing things that they didn't know they needed to share, laughter at commonalities that they didn't know existed, laughing at how absolutely different they are from people that they thought they were very much alike.
Okay.
Right. So that was one of the things that surprised me right away was that people genuinely laughed in the conversation. Another thing that surprised me was how quickly people became vulnerable. The questions I asked, especially in the 100 Voices conversation, were pretty surface level questions on their face. But for instance, I will ask you, Felicia, what do you remember about mealtime in the third grade?
It was either you brought your lunch or you had to stand in line and make friend with your friends or your classmates. Yeah, I mean, it took me back for a minute. Like I just kind of remember what that experience was like.
Right. So all of us who are participating in this conversation have been through the third grade, right? We have maybe some recollection of being in elementary school. It might not be third grade specifically, but around 8 or 9 years old, like what was your frame of reference for the world at that time, right? And what I think we don't realize is that so much of who we are right now was shaped then.
Yeah, yeah.
So much of our learning about who is in the world and who we get to be in the world happens around that age.
Hmm.
And so much of who we still are, right, is that person trying to navigate who we came to be then. And so it's been really a beautiful journey
Yeah, yeah.
watching people sort of uncover themselves.
And, Tracy, the thing that I always say to people is, a lot of our issues that we have in life, they didn't just happen. They come from a place of childhood, good, bad, or indifferent. And I think about how like when people have some issues, like they haven't moved beyond, let's say when that thing happened,
Yeah.
21, like, yeah, we're going to continue to age, but we're stuck there.
Yeah.
And I think this is just fascinating to me and I would imagine that it takes people back. Like when we talk about race and culture, we think about, what was happening culturally or what happened to us when we were young as a person of color. And so a lot of times we carry that with us and we see other people through that lens. And I would imagine in these sessions, you're unearthing a lot of that, like I feel this way about this cultural people because they did this to me when I was 12 and 13. And so it really kind of unpacks a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah, so I don't offer the 100 Voices as a standalone event anymore. Well, frankly, because it's a lot of work. Uh, but when I work with companies, I will often bring some aspect of those questions with me as sort of a like level setting for our time together. And I I found that when coworkers share, especially in a small group, about who they were as third graders, that it gives them all a different perspective of who the people are across the room from them. Right. And especially because people don't tend to lie about those things. Right. If I'm asking you about who you are today, you might not tell me the truth, or you might not even know how to answer the question. Right. But I'm asking you about a common time in life. Everybody had a third grade time. And for some of us, that time was great. And for some of us, it wasn't great. But we can be honest about it because it's already happened.
Yeah. 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 Tracy, this is also great for like, just leadership, leadership courses like in the workplace. Like where does your how you operate or how do you show up in the world impacts how you show up at work and your leadership style and all of that. And so do you leverage any of this?
Well, I haven't been, not intentionally, but often the people who I'm called in to work with are people who are in leadership roles.
Okay.
And my master's degree is in strategic communication and leadership. So I can't help but like give leadership coaching sort of as part of who I am in the world. Like that's how I show up. I was telling a friend last week that like he was telling me a story and I found myself coaching him in the moment of the story. And I was like, I'm sorry. I don't know how to turn that off. I'm trying.
It's probably like, no, 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 no. That's okay because actually this is helping me. I didn't even realize it, right?
Oh, actually, he was like, I'm not a good student in this moment. So
Okay, we have those too.
it's totally fair. It's totally fair. I hear you. I
Totally.
get it. And thank you for being honest about it in this
Right.
that you cannot receive it. I get it.
I love it. I love it. He was like, wait, 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 wait. We about to go to a place
Right.
that I'm not prepared for.
Right.
Let's stay
I'm
there.
not here for it today.
Right, right. I got it. I got it. And so, Tracy, we're here to talk about like people's journeys and how we have monetized and how you turn this into your livelihood. And so it's interesting that you said that, you didn't when people were like, like, this is a business and you need to get paid. You were like, wait, I just want to help people.
Yeah. I do have to eat.
How have you been able to really kind of make this a thing? Your business operationalized it from this, I want to do good. I think there's a need for this to okay. Now, like let's put the bones.
Yeah. So let me say that most of the things I create in the world are because I need them. And I figure if I need them, other people probably need them too. And so this whole entrepreneurial journey has been self-discovery also. And one of the things have learned about myself is that for most of my life, I've not really been motivated by money. But part of that was because I was either somebody's child or I was somebody's wife, and they were the person who was worried about the money and I didn't have to.
Mhm.
And so for the last decade, basically, I'm somebody's child still. My parents are still around, but I'm not anybody's wife. And so like being able to eat really just relies on me.
Right.
And so I've had to really come to grips with my own money story. And I've had some great money mindset coaching around that. Cause I would just give it away, right? Like I love what I do. I feel like I'm doing the work I was born to do. So I would just show up and do it. So I've had some great coaching around money mindset. I've also had some really amazing people who say my name in rooms I'm not in
Mm.
and
Mm.
invited me to collaborate with them when I wasn't quite sure yet about what this looked like as a business. And so that really was my launch, was people who said, hey, I think I know just the right person to come and do this. And they helped me say what it was worth.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And so when that started to happen, and we talked about this, like, okay, now I got to do this. And now I might have to hire somebody. And now I need a logo. And now I need to make sure, like, people know what I do and how I do it. Like, so was that, like, did that become challenging for you, or like, that just,
Yes, and
okay.
so it is and has been challenging. And I am a person who learns by doing and learns by teaching. And I'd rather just stick my hands in it and make a mess
Right.
than to like not try. And so I have become very familiar with Canva and with all kinds of like with Zoom and with Google Docs and with all this like back end stuff that I've mostly taught myself.
Mhm.
Right. Like I built my own website, right? Like I it's easier for me because of the way my brain works to just try it and do it myself than to try to tell somebody else how to deliver a thing to me. I've also been really fortunate to be surrounded by other very talented people who see what I'm trying to do and who will lend me their expertise. Right. So I know a few people who are graphic artists and who have said, what do you need, TJ? They're like, how can I help you? And so like my logo design is a very talented graphic designer named Amanda who did the logo for me because she wanted to sew into me.
Mm.
Right. And I know we really get like hung up on money because that is the currency we understand. It's the way that American and Western culture work primarily. But I had a girlfriend tell me once that I'm the wealthiest person that she knows. And it is because I have such a deep and vast community and I have a lot of resources at my disposal. I rarely ask for things. I'm terrible at asking, getting better at asking. Right. But because there are so many talented people around me, when I can ask, when I know how to ask, people tend to come through for me. So I'm really grateful for that.
Gotcha. And so talk to me about the marketing. I mean, because, like, consulting is not like a product, service-based business is very different from a product-based business. You got these, you got products, you got widgets, you're making them, you put the units on the shelf, you can see how many you're selling and how many more you need to make, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. But service is a little different. It's the hustle, it's still a hustle, but it's a different kind of hustle.
Yeah.
Talk to us about like that kind of hustle.
Yeah. So it's the beginning of a new year, right? So I'm in that hustle again, right? Like 2024 was 2024. I had clients coming into 2024 that I don't have now. Right.
Mhm.
So I'm starting again, right? Part of that is being clear about what I want to offer and how I want to offer it. Um, so I'm clear for 2025 that there's sort of two ways that I operate in a business space. One of them is a corporate lane where I
Okay.
offer this more human approach to people, to organizations who are looking for um, better ways to answer questions that they didn't know they had, better ways to put people in the heart of their decision making, as opposed to making decisions solely around profit or productivity or policy, right? Like, let's make some decisions around people and how they impact the people on your workforce, right? So that's the sort of corporate facing space. And then there's a community space that I work in that is the other side of my heart,
Mm.
right? Helping those of us who coexist in this country come to grips with who we are in this country and how we impact the country and how the country impacts us. So, yeah.
And Tracy, that's interesting because, we are now finding ourselves in a time where DEI is, um, is not important for a lot of organizations because we're all just one big family. And we all come here to, do our jobs and, achieve the bottom line and return on investment and what impact, to serve the organization that we serve. And so a lot of it has been stripped away. And so a lot of the critical work that you're doing, particularly as you think about your work and this New Year's work, what do you say to that?
Well, I've been sort of disenchanted with DEI as a practice anyway.
Mm.
And so even when I was invited into organizations to do DEI work, I never labeled myself a DEI practitioner. If that's the label you need in order to write me a check, then yes, that is what I do. But the work I actually do is help you have an organization where the people on your team feel safe, seen, and welcome. And
Belonging space.
so I use welcome as opposed to belonging because I have a personal vendetta against the word belonging.
Okay. Okay.
So belonging has two meanings, right? It is the meaning that most people ascribe to it now, which is like, I fit in here and this is my space and they see me, right? But belonging also has a connotation of ownership, and coming from a lineage of people who literally belonged to other people, I don't necessarily want to ascribe that to how I show up in the world.
Okay.
All right. So I don't argue with people who say belonging. Use the word that works for you. It's not the word I choose.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So we all feel welcome.
Yeah.
Got it. I love it. Advice. Entrepreneurship is a tough journey. And I have been thinking about entrepreneurship and what this will really mean, perhaps for the next year, in the next couple of years, as our country has seen this shift. And so what do you say to someone might find themselves, leaning into entrepreneurship, whether it's by desire or I don't want to say force, but they're finding that this might be something I need to explore.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
I would say that entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart.
Mhm.
I would also say that if you are considering an entrepreneurial journey and have not done some self-examination, that you need to do the self-work either first or alongside. Because this sort of baptism by fire will show you some stuff about yourself that you may or may not be ready to know. I was having this conversation earlier today about entrepreneurship in general, but about myself as a person. And I've long known that my brain doesn't necessarily operate the same way other people's brains do. Right? But I didn't realize it as much until people who saw the work I was doing, celebrated the work I was doing, would recommend me to stuff like business accelerators or incubators. And most of those programs tend to be sort of cookie cutter, right? Here's what it looks like to be in business for yourself. Here's the things you need to have in order to be a successful business person. You should create a 5-year plan or whatever the things are, right? And they all pretty much look the same. All of those programs frustrate me because I operate more often from intuition and spirit than I do from whatever's happening in my brain. And I got a pretty good brain, but like my heart and my spirit are stronger, right? And that's where I've had more success when I trust my intuition than when I try to put out something on paper and stick to a plan. And for my friends most of them are very linear people, they're like, I don't understand how you're doing this. And it doesn't make sense. And I'm like, that's true. It doesn't make sense to you. It doesn't make sense to most people, but it makes sense to me. And as long as I'm the only person who's suffering the repercussions of the things that don't make sense, then just let me trust me. And so for people who are considering becoming entrepreneurs, like, how much do you know about yourself? How much do you know about the way you think, the way you operate, the things that motivate you, right? And then, like, are you the kind of person who would do well by having a business coach and an incubator and an accelerator program? Or are you the kind of person who needs to be left alone and just like go for it, right? Some people are risky in that they will go jump out of a perfectly good airplane, right? I don't take those kind of risks, right? But I also am the kind of person who will say, like, wake up with an idea and then launch it in 3 days without considering, like, is there a market for this? Who else is going to do it? Right? Like, I'm like, it woke me up out of my sleep. So it feels like an instruction. I'm going to go do it. If people show up, great. If people don't show up, well, then I know that that one didn't work.
And have you found, Tracy, that, in your sphere of business owners, is that a lot of that personality?
I have not found that there's a lot of that personality.
Okay.
No, I find most people that I know who have gone into business for themselves are more like type A, and they have a list, they got a regiment, they got a like structure. I'm just not that person.
So and so probably the work that you're doing, where you are listening and helping people create solutions, is probably fit your personality very.
Yeah. I'm absolutely doing, as I said earlier, the work I was born to do. Like, I'm wired for it. I am uniquely qualified in a lot of ways to sit with people, to hear their stories, to help them make sense of their own stories, to help them understand how their story fits into a larger story, right? Like, that's the work.
Yeah.
Opens my heart up every day, right? So whether that's in a community space or a corporate space, it's the same work. It just has different labels.
Got it. Got it. And so, what do you wish you knew when you started this journey that you know now?
I kind of wish I knew that there's no way for me to plan any of it.
Okay.
Right? If somebody had told me 5 years ago that I would have been on some 30 podcast or something silly like that, that I would have had opportunities to do keynotes for organizations, that I would have a newsletter that has 500 people on it who live across the country. Like, none of this, I wouldn't have been able to plan any of it. So even if I had sat down to create a 5-year plan for the Quiet Rebel, it wouldn't look anything like what it actually is, because there's no way for me to know.
Right. Wow. Wow. And so, yeah, I think that, and what I've learned about the small business thing, and I always say I'm not a business owner, I'm just a supporter of small business, is that things are going to happen that you unexpect to happen. And as you've indicated, it's going to put you in spaces that you can't always really, really prepare for.
Yeah. And I want to add, Felicia, real quick.
Yeah.
Like, so often, particularly when I'm thinking about like the business plan people,
Yeah.
that what they ask you to prepare for, and it's great, is to prepare for what could go wrong, right? But what I'm experiencing is the things that can go right. And that has blown my mind more than the things that could go wrong. Things are going to go wrong. We live in a world where things go wrong, right?
Yeah.
But so I have this list of agreements that I bring with me into all of my workspaces. And the first one is love first always. And love is an acronym, stands for listen with your heart, own your experience, venture into unfamiliar territory, and expect the best. And it's that E, that expect the best, right? That, like, you have no idea how good this can be until you just go do it, right?
Yeah, interesting, Tracy. I was just thinking just the other day, and I was thinking about perspective. and how a lot of times we come into these spaces where we have these thoughts about around people we already know. Like, you're expecting them to show up the way they always show up, good, bad, or indifferent. And I just had this moment. I was like, what if we thought about, like, you walk in this space expecting something good that changes the whole trajectory of your body language, how you are going to receive whatever happens in that space, as opposed to, I know that so and so is going to be saying this and doing that. And so I think it's that whole thing that you just outlined, that when you come in, you're gonna just come in expecting something good.
Yeah.
And you don't bring all that other stuff with you. Like, it's gonna be good. Now I don't know what's gonna really be good, but it's gonna be good.
Right.
And I don't know what it's gonna look like.
And at the end of the day, actually, it's all good, even if it wasn't good.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah.
what is the statement? Either you win or you learn, right? Like,
You
there's
win or you learn.
yeah, that's not mine. It's somebody else's. I
I
don't.
know, but I mean, just the thought of that. You're either going to win or you're going to learn something as a part of the process, or it not going your way. Like, you're going
Yeah.
to walk away with something, right?
Either way, it's gonna be good,
Either way, it's going to be good.
right?
And I think that's a great, but I mean, I think that's a great mantra. Like, there's this whole, like, businesses don't, the success of businesses you generally have a 5 to 7 year span. Most times they fail after 7 years. And even and let's just say it doesn't go beyond 7 years, you got something from that. And a lot of people
Yeah.
are serial entrepreneurs. They start something, it didn't go well, learn something, start something else.
Yep.
And so I think that's great. Like, you win or you learn. Like, yeah, that's it for 2025. You win or you learn. I don't know who we give credit to, but that's it. That's it. So
Yeah.
I think that's great. And so, Tracy, what's next for Quiet Rebel?
So, for 2025, the plan. Now, I'm saying that loosely because plans change around here kind of fast. The plan is for the community facing side of this work to do a year-long series called Stories That Shape Us. And so each quarter has a different focus. And the first quarter of this year is fables and fairy tales. So we're doing a series of conversations about fables and fairy tales and the lessons we've learned from them, and like how we carry those throughout our life. So I'm excited about the stories that shape us in all of the like public facing work. And in the private facing work, I'm excited to introduce more people to a more human approach and to help people create space in their organizations for people to feel safe, seen, and welcome.
Fascinating. And so, how do people lean into this work that you're doing? And, like, how do they become a part of it? Like,
So,
this is just great.
so if you visit my website, which is thequietrebel.org, there's a pop-up that'll come up that'll invite you to sign up for my newsletter. That is the fastest way that I communicate with most people. The newsletter is called Tuesdays with TJ. And it always comes out on a Tuesday, but not on any particular Tuesday. It's not weekly. It's not monthly. It is on a Tuesday when I feel like it.
I like that.
So my grandfather, whenever we would see him, when we were leaving, he would always say, "See you Tuesday." And it didn't matter if we were going to see him next Tuesday or tomorrow or a year from now. Every time we left, he said, "See you Tuesday." And so that is the sort of the background story of why Tuesdays and why this sort of random approach to this newsletter.
Love it. I love it. And the thing that I hear in this in your what's to come is really around storytelling. And because I just believe that people love to hear stories. Like, you indicated, like, you can go to a class, it's turnkey. They're going, one semester you're going to get it, next semester same textbook, you're going to get it again. But it's the stories that really make, I think, our society and our lives so much richer, because we get these perspectives that we haven't thought about,
Yeah.
or that resonates with people. And people like to talk. People like to tell their stuff. I mean, you're in this business where people like to talk.
Yeah. And even when they stumble into a story they didn't mean to tell, they still want to tell it.
And then they realize, oh, wait, I wasn't really expecting to share all that. But
Yeah.
that was that was pretty refreshing for me. Like they feel some sense of relief that they were able to tell that story.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate this work. And that, a lot of people are looking to lean into what drives them. And so, because we can create products all day. But when I think about service-based businesses outside of taxes, and, those critical services that we need to live every day,
Yeah.
but it's really tapping into who you are as a person that helps us do our work better, whether that's in a corporate or if that's in your own your own business. I think there's so much value there into making us better humans. So I really appreciate this. And so, Tracy, before we close,
Yes.
what are your words of wisdom for staying or starting the hustle?
Words of wisdom. I would say trust yourself. Nobody knows you better than you. So absolutely seek wise counsel, right? And also trust yourself. Because other people's wisdom comes from what they know, but they don't know you.
Ah. Other people's wisdom comes from what they know, not what you have learned about yourself. I love it. I love it. So, Tracy, I just can't thank you enough for joining us. And I always close with remember, there is wisdom in the hustle. So, Tracy, thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to what Quiet Rebel will do to impact the country.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.